Okay, review number 4 on solving quadratics. This time we're going to solve the quadratics by what's called completing the square. Completing the square is a much more involved process than what we've been seeing. So you'll see each of these steps worked out. But what we want to do is we want to get the variables on one side of the equation. So we want to get the x squared and the x isolated on one side. So we're going to want to move the 12 over in this case. Then we're going to want to take half of the coefficient of the x term and square it, and then we're going to want to add that to both sides. So let's at least do that to example 1 through step 3. Let's isolate the x. So if I isolate the x, I'm going to subtract the 12 from both sides. And I'm going to be left with x squared minus 8x, leave a little bit of space, equals a negative 12. All right? Then we're going to take half of the coefficient of the x term. Here's the x term. Half of that negative 8 is a negative 4. And then we're going to want to square it. All right, so a negative 4 squared is a negative 4 times a negative 4, which is a positive 16. And we're going to take that positive 16 and we're going to add it to both sides of the equation. So plus 16 plus 16. All right, that takes us through step 3. Step 4, we're going to write the variables. We're going to write the variable side as a binomial squared. So here's the variable side. This is called a perfect squared trinomial. And a perfect squared trinomial can be factored in a binomial squared. The binomial that it's going to factor into is going to be x. So x squared becomes x. And then whatever half of that middle number was with the sign. So half of a negative 8x, or half of a negative 8, is a negative 4. So if I take x minus 4 and multiply it by itself, x minus 4, I'm going to get x squared minus 8x plus 16. All right, so this factors into this. And then on the other side, I'm just going to combine the numbers I have. A negative 12 and a positive 16 is a plus 4. All right, so write the variable side as a binomial squared. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to get inside here. And to get inside here, we have to take care of that squared. And the inverse operation of squaring something is to take the square root. So we want to take the square root of both sides. So I'm going to take the square root of this side, and I'm going to take the square root of this side. But when you take the square root of the number side, that's this side here, we have to put a plus and minus in front because there's actually two answers here. Okay? So when I take the square root of something squared, by definition, they cancel out. That's the reason why we do that. And that's leaving me just with x minus 4 equals plus and minus the square root of 4, 2. All right, so take the square root of both sides, making the number side plus and minus. We did that. And then solve by setting the binomial equal to the plus number and then the minus number. So my binomial, x minus 4, gets set equal to a positive 2, and x minus 4 gets set equal to a negative 2. And then I solve. I'm going to add 4, and I'm going to get x is equal to 6. Over here I'm going to add 4, and I'm going to get x is equal to 2. And those are my answers. All right. Following the same steps for example number 2, I want to get the variables on one side of the equation. So I'm going to move the negative 6x over to the x squared term. So I have x squared plus 6x, leave a little bit of space, is equal to a positive 16. All right. Take half of the coefficient of the x term and square it, and then add that number to both sides. Half of the positive 6 is a positive 3. I square a positive 3, I get a positive 9, and I add that to both sides. What I've created over here is a perfect squared trinomial that could be written as a binomial squared equals 25. That's 16 and 9. The binomial is going to be from x squared, it drops down to x, and it's exactly what half of this middle number was, which is a positive 3. There it is. Next step is I want to get rid of that squared, so I'm going to square root both sides. Remembering when I square root the number side, I'm going to put plus and minus in front. When I square root something squared, I just get what's underneath the radical because the square root and the square cancel because they're inverses, equals plus or minus the square root of 25 is 5. Take your binomial and set it equal to the positive answer. Take your binomial and set it equal to the negative answer and solve. Subtract 3 from both sides. X is equal to 5 minus 3 is 2. Subtract 3 from both sides. X is equal to a negative 5 and a negative 5 and a negative 3 is a negative 8. And there are your two solutions. And that's solving a quadratic by completing the square. So here you go. You guys have two that you can try. Follow these steps that are listed here and solve this quadratic by, or these quadratics by completing the square. Good luck.